Hello, I have been researching how the former Soviet Union used language to control their people. Have you ever wondered how powerful language could be? Well, today I will be sharing with you some very important details concerning the Soviets' usage of language in the controlling of the people. Language was used like a tool, pushing what was deemed a threat by the former Russia to establish what is so famously known as the USSR. Before the dreadful year of 1917, the official language of Russia was, Russian. Yes, many small groups of people spoke surrounding languages, but all in all, Russian was the official language. After the Soviet Revolution, as it is known to be in 1917, the years to follow, the surrounding languages spoke in Russian was to be banned. A very simple yet powerful and threatening word was used to describe the Soviets' action. It was called Russification. Many of their northern languages such as Swedish and Danish, etc., were allowed to be used, but the Russification of languages still continued. Yet it wasn't so bold as the previous attempt in the year of 1921. Russification was abandoned while the Russian language itself was considered the high-class language. The lingua franca used by people in authority. The Russian language struggled to stay afloat because of the toss of power and national culture throughout Russia. Also, it was not considered an ethnic language used by the army scientific purposes and had been considered the lingua franca for a long time. The Russian language was lastly allowed personal status, whereas other languages only had territorial status. In Russia, there was two main thrusts in the policy. The first one was called the early policy. This was used in schooling, public professions, and communications, and in many areas like that. The second policy was known as universalize. This was a harsh and unmerciful policy. This changed anything written in a foreign language into the Russian language. This seems similar to the Russification which was said to be abandoned by the 10th Congress in 1921. Most of the Arabic languages besides Tajik, which is Persian, were pushed to develop ways literally alongside the Soviets, considering the languages as separate from each other. The word literally means the words of a language. Many ethnicities in the Soviet Union who had lands from the Jews, Finns, Germans, and the list goes on, had their lands taken away from them. Many people were taken to Central Asia due to the suspicion of working with the Nazis in Germany. For the most part, they were allowed home, but only in certain cases. With a complex system of language control, many new things had to be done. On developing new books, teachers, schools, etc., the task would be enormous. The Soviets succeeded in this area. They wanted to Sovietize their country. And by this point in their communist history, Russia was very linguistic. That was not their goal, but it happened. While Lenin was in power, on part of the ethnics, Russia was voluntarily, but this was soon lost once Lenin died and others took over. This resulted in what is known as the following cyclicization. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing it right, but emphasizing terminological borrowing from Russian, compulsory learning of Russian. These were harsh results not only to the Russian people, but to the rest of the world. It affected everything. This caused learning Russian a very harder task. Usually if a person would want to learn Russian, they of course would have to get used to the pronunciation and syntax over time, but Russia did not allow that to happen. They forced people to learn it properly and immediately. Things like this continued on and alongside what is known as the Potemkin syndrome. Anyone who wanted to see Russia how it is said to be would not know the problems and the failures that the Russian policies were undergoing. The tension among countries and states in Europe and Russia was beginning to boil over. Some groups broke up while others were allowed to return to the fold. The next major thing to consider about the former USSR is ethnicity, citizenship, and nationality. The general idea of having all the Russian states under one roof in one fold sounded great to the founders of the former Soviet Union, but was it? The answer is no. Because culture, ethnicity, and language differed from state to state, it grew tension upon the Russians as new policies were established. They could not live together under one roof, while one state spoke all Russian and had all Russian culture, while the other side spoke half Russian and had a mixed culture. It just could not work. The policies continued and the tension continued as well. Citizens' rights were being violated, and under such strict Soviet law, it became almost impossible to live in Russia. Nearing the end of the Soviet reign, in a book titled The USSR Yearbook, admitted to give people back the right to speak their own language instead of forcing Russian on them. They were finally allowed to freely speak it, even in public and everyday life. This shows that the different policies that were put into place did not work and the Soviets' ways could not stand. Russia was considered one of, if not the biggest ethnic state on Earth, with over 100 ethnic groups, 20 nationalities, and a population of 1 million according to the census of 1989. Russia was filled with different cultural and languages, but mainly Russian. As many different people, languages, and cultures mixed, tension would continue. Over the next 15 years, the income in Russian states was decreasing. In the year of 1991, Yeltsin was elected president of Russia. During the time that he was elected, the communists were being arrested as attacks were roaring against the numerous parties that were being dissolved. Yeltsin saw to the dissolving of the Soviet Union as a democracy was established in its place. Even though the Democratic Union was established, there was a concept, an idea that the state of Russia was Eurasian and not Russia. Many disagreed over this. Russia was undergoing a problem. This problem is called nationalism, and I wrote for a better understanding of the problem. The imperial instinct of the Russians is exceptionally strong, and as yet we simply do not imagine a form of existence other than the framework of the present empire, from west to Vladivostok, quoted in Svorluk, 1989-26. With this, tension continued. Another aspect that the Ukrainians considered a tool used in Russification is the Red Army. They were predominantly Russian, spoke Russian, and was the government. They had worked with former Soviet Union and now was working with the Democratic Union. Ethnics had to mix, and that would be hard. Lastly, a soldier was not to be stationed at his home because of rules put in place for security reasons. The next thing in which complicated matters even further, which was the basis for the Soviet government structure, is what is famously known as Maoist ideology and Soviet Marxist policy. For a brief background, Marxism was founded by Karl Marx in the mid-19th century. Lenin then decided to put that theory of government structure to the test. For a better understanding, I will quote from an article on number one titled Maoist Ideology and the Soviet Marxist Policy from the report Language Policy of Former Soviet Union. The basis is the economic structure of the Soviet at the given stage of its development. The second quote, the superstructure is the political, legal, religious, artistic, and philosophical views of society and the political, legal, and other institutions corresponding to them. According to the Maoism, language belonged to the superstructure of society. Mao had many beliefs, such as believing that all languages came from one proto-linguistic mammal family, from the three listed here: Hamitic, Semitic, and Japhetic. Lastly, he believed that all languages in the world could merge into one and resemble the Russian language. Eventually, it was realized that their plan would not work. The plan of Russification then made Russian available to everyone, and even though Russian was considered the big brother language, it was now realized that citizenship did not need some special language. Mao soon realized that there were contradictions between the Maoists and linguistic science, and so he tried to fix those. He decided to get rid of the contradictions by announcing all tradition and that it could fit in with Marxism. He then went ahead and introduced a formula that was wrong. He soon found out that Soviet linguistics cannot go on with the wrong formula. Last week we had seen how the Soviet Union's ideology and government structure could not stand any longer. It collapsed in the year of 1991 and resulted in the rising of many other national groups alongside the old tensions they once felt so long ago. Yes, the USSR was finally gone. A democracy was now in its place. But the tension continued, and who knows what it may lead to in the future. From 1917 to 1991, I have showed you the ins and outs of how language was used by the USSR in its ideologies and society. It is amazing at the great lengths that they went to trying to push Russian onto everyone. Yes, Russian is a nice language, sounding language in my opinion, but it was used in the wrong areas. Well, there you have it, a report on how language was used and how it affected the entire nation of Russia and its states.